This album is called Music Fashion Film, and I think that is important to say out loud before we start because most people hear that title and move on, but I want to stay there for a second because she's not just listening to everything she likes. She's telling you exactly how to read this project. Today, I'm going to tell you which song sounds like which era. I am not going to compare this to Brad. I am not going to give you, pitchfork style breakdown or production choices. What I'm going to do is read this album the way I know how to read things, which is like visually, aesthetically, and specifically conceptually. I don't know because this is a visual argument about the three industries, and Charlie XCX knows all three of them from the inside, which is really why it works. And I'll tell you the framework first. The album has three music videos that correspond directly to the three words in the title: rock music or music, SS26, that means spring summer 26 for fashion, and cinema for film. Everything is black and white, every single video except SS26.
I wanted to add something because in the rock music video there's color too, but only on the parts where the audience shows. The other parts are the making of. In rock music, the making of means black and white.
And I think that this is not an accident, okay? I think that is the most important visual decision in this entire project. And we're going to get there, but first, let me tell you what connects all three videos before we separate them. Well, look, if I have to say this, I will say that music is like the show has to be disruptive, fashion is like the show must go on, and cinema is like the show can be fixed. Those three sentences are the entire basis of this album. Three different relationships with the disaster, and three different rules for how to perform when things go wrong. And Charlie puts herself inside all three of those words, not as a visitor, but as someone who has actually lived in all of them. So that is what makes this actually interesting because she's not imagining those industries, she knows them. And when someone who knows something makes art about it, the details are different. The details are specific in a way that only comes from being inside. So that is what we are going to look at today. The details. The ones that are so easy to miss if you are just listening. The first music video is rock music, and the first image is Charlie throwing a television out of a window. And I want you to sit with that for a second because it's not random. Television is modern technology, and rock music as a genre has always had a complicated relationship with modernity, specifically with the idea of what counts as real music. The generation that currently holds the cultural authority to decide what is real music, which is Gen X, by the way, grew up during the rock era. So, for a significant portion of the people who have the loudest opinions about musical legitimacy, real music sounds like rock. And here is Charlie throwing the television out of the window. In the opening frame, or in the opening scene of the video, Carl, rock music. I do not think that this is a coincidence. I think that is her acknowledging that to make something that read as raw and legitimate, you have to reject the polished and the modern, even performatively, even if it's a prop. The gesture matters.
Basically all the time.
Then she's in the crowd, and this is the part I found most interesting visually because she's not above the crowd. She's not on a stage separated from the audience. She is the same level, mixed into the people around her, and the crowd is moving with her, not toward her, with her. And I think that this is intentional because there is a very specific challenge that famous musicians face, which is that their most powerful songs are usually grading from a lived experience, from a perspective that is relatable because it was real. But by the time those songs connect with an audience, the artist is no longer living that life. They're famous now. They're rich now. They are separated from the exact experience that made the song work. So the performance of being part of the crowd, of being at the same level as the people listening, is actually part of what makes the connection feel real, even when it is constructed, even when it is in a music video, even when everyone knows she is the artist. The visual language says, I am still one of you. And she pulls it off partly because of what she's wearing. There is this scene where she has an amazing dress. By the way, this is out of context. This is out of context, I know. But this is an amazing dress that she has. It's like it was designed to exist in a black and white music video, and it does not distract, it enhances. It makes her look like she belongs in the visual language of the video, which is exactly what good costume design does. And I love that, by the way. I have to point to that. Then there is the moment in the apartment, and this is where the making of section of the video lives. And I think this is the most conceptually interesting part of the rock music video, because in the fashion video we will see him doing Charlie's makeup, hair, and everything. And in the cinema video we will see a director directing the scene, the crew moving props, and all of that. But in this one, the process of making music is not physical in the same way you cannot show someone making a song the way you can show someone walking in the wrong way or rehearsing a scene. Music happens in moments that are not contained. It happens when you are driving, when you're in the shower, when you're having a conversation. It is not a location, it is not a schedule, is it a collection of thoughts that accumulate until they became something. And Charlie represents that with a tower of cigarettes, a physical object that implies time. Each cigarette is a moment. So each cigarette is a thought that happened during the process of smoking it. And the tower is the accumulation of all those moments. It's it's very interesting, okay? So stay with me. It is the only way to make visible something that is fundamentally invisible, which is the act of thinking towards the song. I think that is a very smart visual choice because in the other two videos we see the process clearly, but here we get a tower of cigarettes, and somehow that communicates everything. Then there is the Sistine Chapel reference. Is this? Yes, it's the Sistine Chapel reference. The two fingers almost touching like that of classical. It's like I read that as an acceptance of classical art as legitimate, which connects back to the television being thrown out the window. There's a scene throughout this video that what she is doing counts. That it belongs to a lineage of things that matter, that it is not trivial, not disposable, not just content. And the Sistine Chapel gesture is the most explicit version of that claim, almost like a poster, I think. And the crowd walks through it. They do not stop, they do not look up, the more through her image. And I read that as the most honest thing this video says, which is that what remains of a musician is not the music, it is the feeling that the music left in the people who hear it. The song does not live in the artist, it lives in whoever was changed by it. Michael Jackson, for example, is still Michael Jackson because there are people alive who remember how his music made them feel. And when those people are gone, the version of Michael Jackson that existed for them goes with them. That is not sad. That is just how music actually works. The art is not the object. The art is the experience of the object. And the crowd walking through her paper face is that idea made visual, I think. Now we move to SS26, and the first thing I need to say is that this video is color. This video has color. It is the only one in the trilogy that does. Everything else is black and white. But here is the thing. It does not feel like it has color. Everything in the frame is still like black or white. The set is white. Her hair in the most striking look is black. And the clothes are white or black. The mood is monochromatic, actually. And then at the bottom of the frame, if you look, the soles of the shoes are red.
I'm doing now.
That is the only color in the entire video that pops up, red soles. Which, if you know anything about fashion, are Louboutin. And Louboutin as a symbol belongs to a very specific cultural moment. The red sole was born in 1992, but it became cultural icon through the 90s and 2000s, which is exactly when the generation that currently controls fashion taste was forming its aesthetic reference points. So even the color choice is generously generously specific. Even the one moment of color points back to the same era that the rock video was gesturing towards with the television. This whole album is in conversation with the generation for some reason that is not Charlie's own, and I think that is part of what makes it interesting in this video. She's above the crowd. She's on the runway, elevated, which is the literal and metaphorical position of the model in fashion. And she is also in the crowd wearing sunglasses, watching the show from below. But here is what I found interesting about that. She's not playing both roles at once in a way that connects them. She is playing both roles and showing how far apart they actually are. She's the same actress, in the video, the same person, in two completely different worlds. And even being the interpreter of both, she cannot make them meet. Not even in a music video, not even when you control the narrative. The model on the runway and the person in the crowd, the public, are not the same, even when they share a face. And then there is the backstage scene, and this is where the fashion video says something that the music video cannot say, because in fashion, the performance does not stop when you leave the stage. The cameras are there in the dressing room, the phones are there in the car, someone is always watching, someone is always recording. So the model has to be on, has to be performing, even when she's in a row, when she is, with 12 hands working on at the same time, when she is exhausted, when she does not want to show, her body. The show must go on. The show must go on. It's not just a phrase in fashion, it is a contract. If you're a model,
Gee, take my
then there is the mirror. And this is a detail I want you to remember, because it connects all three videos in a way that I do not think is accidental. In rock music, Charlie looks at herself in a mirror. She's a rock star looking inward, looking at herself to find the thing that will connect with other people. The mirror is like a tool of self knowledge. But in SS26, Charlie looks at us through the mirror. She's a model using her own reflection to look outward. Outward, using the mirror to perform proximity, to simulate closeness with the audience. The mirror is a tool of performance. It's the same object and completely different intention. And in cinema, there's no mirror, because the director does not need one. Actually, the director does not need to know herself better in order to make the work. And the director does not need to perform closeness with the audience. The director disappears behind the camera and the work speaks for itself. Three videos, three relationships with visibility, three ways of being seen or choosing not to be seen, actually. The video ends white, not black like rock music, because rock music ends black. This one ends white. I read that as the blank canvas that the model represents for every brand that hires her. She does the work, she builds the image, and then the brand takes the credit because the model is a white canvas. Whatever the designer puts on her is what the world sees. And she's in the surface, not the signature. And the fail, which happens mid video, by the way, is the only moment where that changes because when the model falls, she's suddenly at the same level as everyone else. She's suddenly human, and in that moment, someone in the crowd meets her eyes. Herself, by the way, but someone. Because shame and vulnerability are the only currency that crosses every social line. The only moment where the person on the wrong way and the person watching the wrong way are actually in the same place is the moment when something goes wrong. It's sad, but it's true. Cinema is the video where Charlie steps back the furthest. She is not the rock star, she's not the model, she's the director. And the director is not in front of the camera, the director is behind it. The video follows an actor, male, frustrated, being moved through a scene that keeps not working. And there is a detail here that I love, which is the Blackberry, which is in the start of the video. By the way, in a video that is about cinema, which is one of the most technologically demanding art forms, or the modern art, in fact, the character is using a Blackberry, not a smartphone, a Blackberry. And I read that the same way I read the television being thrown out the window, but not as a rejection, as functionality, I think, because in cinema, if it works, it stays. A film camera from 1960 that produces a specific grain, I don't know, that a director wants is still being used today. Not because of sentiment, but because it produces a result that nothing else produces. A Blackberry that receives calls and sends messages reliably, of course, is still functional. Cinema does not discard things because they're old. Cinema keeps things because they work. In fact, the male actor is an older man, and that's hard. That's hard for me because everything makes sense.
People.
There is the wardrobe detail, which is small but very precise. The actor is wearing a plain white shirt. Everyone else on set, the crew, the assistant, is wearing patterns, textures, prints, or something with character, things with character. And the person who is there to pretend is wearing white, just plain white, because pretending requires blankness, requires a surface that can be written on, requires the absence of a specific identity so that another identity can be placed on top, like the blood on their white shirt. The actor is wearing white because the actor is there to become someone else. The crew is wearing patterns because the crew is already themselves. That distinction is visible in the clothes, and I think that is intentional. I think that is very, you know, like important. The video ends with Charlie's face, not the actor's face, hers. And that is the final statement of this entire trilogy. In rock music, the video ends with the crowd moving through her image. In SS26, the video ends with a white frame, a blank surface waiting to be claimed. Because in cinema, the video ends with the director, the last credit that rolls, the ones that everyone remembers, is the director, not the actor, not the crew, the director. And Charlie, who has spent this entire album inside three different industries, ends the visual argument of the project by claiming the only title that carries authorship. She's not the performer, she's not the body, she's the one who decided. Now, the songs, I want to be clear, about what my ratings are measuring, because I am not rating production quality, I am not rating lyrical complexity, I am not comparing this album to Brad or any other project. I am rating each song as a conceptual piece within this specific album, okay? How well does it serve the argument the album is making? How well does it do what it is trying to do within the world that music fashion film is building? Okay, so let's start. Rock music, 3 out of 5, by the way. SS26, 4 out of 5. Car declined, 3 out of 5. The bridge saves it, by the way. Camera, 4 out of 5. 2007, 3.5 out of 5. I'm afraid, 2.5 out of 5. Yeah, 3.5 out of 5. Wink wink, 3.5 out of 5. The video is excellent, and genuinely one of the strongest visual pieces attached to this album is Wink Wink. Persona, 3 out of 5. Magic Metal Montana, 4 out of 5. No One Lasts Forever, 5 out of 5. This is the best song in the album, and I think it is the best song because it does something very specific, which is end the album with a male voice, or well, a different voice. After an album that has been entirely her, there's something about hearing a different voice carry the final argument of this project that works, because the album is about free industry that are not exclusively hers, and ending with another voice is a way to acknowledging that in some way. Also, the content of that final song is in the direct conversation with the visual argument of the cinema video. The director disappears behind the work. Nothing lasts forever. The credit rolls. Someone else carries the memory forward. It is the most coherent final statement this album could have made. And I like it. I love it, actually. Besides edition, 5.5 minutes total. These songs, 3 songs, and I will be honest, this does not add much to the album conceptually. It feels like 5 extra minutes for the fans. That is exactly what a B-side edition should be, but because we're analyzing concept today, there's not much here that extends the argument of the main album. So I keep thinking about you every single day and night. 2 out of 5. It's a 2. So next, Playboy Bunny, 1 out of 5. This is the weakest song on the entire project, including the main album. By the way, it has to be a 1 in every album, of course. If you take away the music, then what has she got? 3.5 out of 5. This is the best song in the B-sides, and it is interesting because the premise of the song is its own critic. The lyrics repeat the same phrase over and over and over, and the music does all the work, which is her answer to the people who criticize artists for criticizing the sound of a lyrical content. If you take away the music, that does she have? She had the title repeated because the music was always the point. It is a sharp idea, executed simply, and it ends the entire project on a note that loops back to the beginning, which is the music is the art, not despite the production, because of it. The last thing I want to say is about what this album does that I have not seen done this clearly in a long time, which is that it earns its concept. A lot of albums announce a concept and then abandon it to songs in. This one builds a concept into the visual language, into the wardrobe choices, into the mirror placement, into the ending frames of each video, into the color palette, into the which character gets the final shot. The concept is in the details, and the details are consistent, which means someone thought about this very carefully, and I love that, by the way. And the thing that is most interesting to me is that the analysis I just gave you, no AI generated reviews is going to give you. No, because AI cannot analyze, but because this kind of reading requires having looked at fashion shows with the specific attention of someone who has stood near a runway. It requires knowing what a BlackBerry communicates to someone who grew up when BlackBerries were, the serious phone. It requires understanding what a red soul mean in the context of a specific generation coming of age. Those are not facts you can retrieve. They are reading that come from a specific position in the world. That is what cultural analysis actually is. Not summarizing what is there, but reading what it means from where you are standing. Anyway, I am Samaf. Subscribe if this gave you a new way to look at this album, like a visual one. See you next time.